Happy Monday. Yeah, bah humbug, right? As the Toronto Blue Jays again lose a home series. They've lost 11 of their last 18 games now at the Rogers Center. And over their last five home series, they've won just one of those home series. My goodness, horrific time of the season to be falling flat on your face at home. And today, in the first segment of the Locked On Blue Jays podcast, we'll take a look at the good, the bad, and the ugly of what we saw this past weekend. And then we're going to deep dive the what we can look forward to as the Washington Nationals are in town for a 3-game series. And I mean, just be forewarned. I know on the surface, you're going to see the Nationals in last place. You're going to get excited about that. The Washington Nationals come in hot, like Seattle Mariners hot. Yeah. Oh boy.
You are Locked On Blue Jays, your daily Toronto Blue Jays podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, friends. Craig Ballard, Locked On Blue Jays. Yes, indeed. Been locked on Toronto Blue Jay baseball ever since I can remember in my life. And yes, just as a side note, the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays are as awful a good Blue Jay team as I can ever remember. I mean, there's never been a moment during the 2023 Toronto Blue Jay season where it was going to allow for my hair regrowth, right? Like this one has been a stressful series. Again, especially when you consider how good this team is certainly on paper. Anyway, my goodness. But yeah, passion for Toronto Blue Jay baseball. I hope you would agree. Knowledgeable about Toronto Blue Jay baseball as well. And I think you have a passion for Blue Jay baseball. That's why you're choosing to spend part of your day talking Blue Jays with me today. So hello, and I thank you for that. The Locked On Blue Jay podcast, of course, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. I want to remind you all Toronto Blue Jay action this season available to take in on Sirius XM. And if you're taking in today's episode on the Locked On Blue Jays YouTube page, hello, thank you for that. Please do hit that like, leave that comment, and hit that subscribe if you haven't already. Shout out to the everydayers watching the Locked On Blue Jay podcast on the YouTube page every day. And a lot of you leaving those comments as well. I see you, and I thank you for that. And to the everydayers making the Locked On Blue Jay podcast your first podcast listen every day as well, whether you take that in Apple, Spotify, however you take in your podcast, I see you there as well. I want to say hello, and I appreciate you also. Now, coming out of the All-Star break, the Blue Jays swept the Arizona Diamondbacks at the Rogers Center. You remember that? Those were better times, right? Yes, indeed. Well, they have really scuffled at home since. Again, in the 18 games that have followed that series, the Blue Jays have won just 7 of those 18 home games. They've won just 1 of the last 5 home series. My goodness. And around here on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast on Monday, I mean, we haven't talked for a few days, right? By the time Monday comes. So we usually like to deep dive the good and the bad and the ugly of what we saw this past weekend. So let's get into that now. And of course, as per usual, we start with the good. Well, this good is screaming from the rooftops. I mean, is it even good? It's great. Davis Schneider, how fun was he this weekend? How good was he this weekend? Thank goodness, finally getting a spot in the lineup. My gosh, he got the game-winning home run against Cincinnati a couple Fridays ago. Hadn't played since. I mean, you know my issues with John Schneider and his lineup construction. My goodness, a lot of things with John Schneider, but lineup construction certainly one of them. But Davis Schneider in there Saturday did a great job. In there Sunday did a great job. Overall, 5 for 7. Is that going to work with a walk as well? My goodness, 4 runs, a pair of home runs, and 5 RBIs. This kid's 11 games into his big league career, and he's already looking like he's going to be the savior of the offense this season. Slim Daddy Vladdy, I've got him in the good category. Just 4 for 14, but a pair of home runs, and they came at home. He's been really struggling at home. We're going to take that, right? Good job by Vlad. George Springer, 4 for 12. Speaking of a pair of home runs, and George Springer had 5 runs scored this series. George Springer really, and some defense as well, right? George Springer firmly in the good category. Speaking of firmly in the good category, everydayers will know I was not expecting anything in 2023. I thought Hyunjin Ryu was done with the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, quite the opposite. Not only is he not done, but as I spoke, I was on the Fan 590 on Sunday morning. Again, I'm there every couple of weeks now. I'm just loving it with the Roger Lajoie. And we were talking about the fact that, with such a catastrophic and horrible out of nowhere bad luck, whatever the heck this is happening with Alek Manoah this season, how glorious is it to have something counteracting that with Kikuchi stepping it up, Barrio stepping it. I know not lately, right? But and Hyunjin Ryu contributing to this rotation as well. What a godsend he has been to this rotation, just getting better and better every time out. I thought he looked good, and I thought he's been looking better every time out. I use the Game Time app. Shout out to Game Time, sponsor of the show. I use the Game Time app to go to that Baltimore game where Ryu made his return. And the only thing I liked there, I reported back to you on that. The only thing I liked was his curve. Well, the curve continues to be good, but all of his pitches now getting better and better. There's a lot to be excited about Hyunjin Ryu, thankfully. How good was Jimmy Garcia this weekend? Davis Schneider, I say, is apparently the savior of the offense in 2023. Is Jimmy Garcia the savior of the bullpen? He got 7 big outs this weekend, and 6 of those 7 were via the strikeout. Jimmy Garcia, have a weekend. He was awesome. Now, you lose 2 out of 3, you continue to free fall at home. Of course, there's going to be some bad and some ugly. Now, in the bad category, Dalton Varsho. Now, everydayers know it's been a couple weeks in a row where we've pleasantly surprised had Dalton Varsho in the good category from what we saw over the weekend. Oh boy, not this past weekend, just 3 for 12. Catchers combined for just 4 for 12. I mean, everydayers know we've talked last season, the catcher spot was the number 1 position as far as offensive production for the Toronto Blue Jays. This season, it is dead last on the team. Way too night and day. The Blue Jays, just like they need Vlad, a few guys in this lineup to pick it up, the Blue Jays need the catchers offensively to pick it up. Now let's get into some ugly. I mean, again, I'm going to mention that everydayers will know because we've talked about this a few times. How many times this season have I just ranted, just gone absolutely nuts on the pitch selection from the Toronto Blue Jays? And I'll say again, I've never seen any team in baseball worse than the 2023 Toronto Blue Jays at not being ready to deal with something, to hit something, not being ready when something was right down the middle, when something was just sitting there on a tee. This has been all season long. Yesterday, that Sunday loss, I've never seen anything like that in my life. I don't even want to tell you how long I've been watching baseball. I don't, I'm old, believe me on that, but a long time. Let's put it that way. I've never seen a more useless game at the plate than Sundays from the Toronto Blue Jays with pitches right down the middle, either just sitting there and taking them like they have been all season, or not getting a good part of the bat, not squaring up that pitch that is sitting on a tee. Some of these were off-speed pitches as well, just sitting there begging to be dealt with, and the Toronto Blue Jays screwed it up time and time again this entire weekend, but in particular on Sunday. Boy, oh boy, for the first time maybe all season, I've got Whit Merrifield in the ugly category. Just 1 for 10. He's 5 for his last 42. Whit Merrifield's last walk was August 6th. It's August 28th. It's August 28th. That's over 3 weeks ago. That was his last walk, and definitely time to get him out of the leadoff spot. He's down to 260 with a 272 on base percentage in the leadoff spot. I mean, terrible. This is terrible. And you know how I feel about Whit Merrifield. I think Whit Merrifield's the X factor for the team this season. The last couple of weeks, though, absolutely terrible. This past weekend, absolutely terrible. Bo, what the heck happened to Bo this weekend? Now, hopefully, I mean, he's in the ugly category because he went out with an injury. Same with White Chapman's in the ugly category because he stunk with performance-wise, but he went out with an injury. Same with Kevin Kiermaier in the ugly category because he hardly even played. Is that an injury there as well? So Bo just 2 for 12 on the weekend with 3 strikeouts plus the injury. My goodness. Matt Chapman continued to just be the worst hitter in sports' history. I mean, my gosh, 2 for 8, 4 strikeouts, had that middle finger issue reappear on Sunday as well. And Kevin Kiermaier on the weekend, again, he didn't play much, but when he did, he was 0 for 4. Now, he scored 2 runs as a pinch runner on Sunday. That's great, but why isn't he getting more playing time? And Jesus, is there more there that we're not being told about? And for the first time all season, Brandon Belt in the ugly category. He was 0 for 6 this weekend, had 3 walks. I mean, of course he did. It's Brandon Belt, but he had 3 strikeouts on Sunday. You saw how bad he was and had some at-bats in big moments, too, that could have really won the game for the Blue Jays on Sunday and came up short every single time. Boy, Blue Jays, I mean, you lose 2 out of 3, you're going to be stacked in the bad, and you're going to have a lot of ugly. We just saw that this past weekend from the Toronto Blue Jays. Now, coming up on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we're going to turn our attention to the upcoming Washington National Series. Now, first, I wanted to mention that, at one time or another, we all need a little financial help. That's why Dave is great. Dave can get you cash when you need a hand between paychecks and can help you build credit by settling the extra cash TM advances on time. Dave is the banking app that is leveling the financial playing field. When you download Dave, you could get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less. No credit check, no late fees. It's part of Dave's extra cash TM account. Advance the money you need with no interest and settle up later. Extra cash TM gives you more money to buy groceries, fill your tank, get the car repaired, catch up on the bills without having to wait for your next paycheck. You can even build credit when you settle up on time. So go to dave.com/MLB and get up to $500 in 5 minutes or less when you download Dave. For terms, visit dave.com/legal. Washington Nationals in town Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday, of course, former Montreal Expos. Blue Jays 41-34 all-time versus this this franchise, but since they became the Nationals 17-15. Now, coming into this game, when you look at the teams coming out of the All-Star break, holy cow, and Blue Jay fans, myself included, every day is how often do we deep dive the schedule this season? Well, we pointed out this stretch of games against Cleveland, against Washington, against Colorado, Oakland, and Kansas City as the opportunity for the Blue Jays to make their move. Already have lost 2 out of these 3 games. And is it ironic? Is it really? I think it's more horribly bad luck. Washington comes to town, and the Blue Jays catch the Nationals right now, where they happen to be on fuego. The Toronto Blue Jays are 21-19 since the All-Star break. The Nationals are 25-16. 25-16. And that includes, and they're 8-5 in August on the road, by the way. So, my God, the Nationals are just playing fantastic baseball. Remember, recently they've traded a lot of their stars, the Max Scherzers, the Trey Turners, Josh Bell, Juan Soto. Well, what's happening here is a lot of the players that, those young prospects that came back, a lot of them were almost major league ready and have now become major league ready, and they're getting a lot of production now on the big league level. Very young team, very exciting team, and you can see the upside here. But my goodness, what horrible luck to have a team with this horrible record coming to town playing this well. Lane Thomas, everydayers know he was the one. He's the outfielder on the Nationals. He leads them with 20 home runs. He was the one player that if the Blue Jays were going to have a big trade at the trade deadline, I hoped it would be him. I love Lane Thomas. Absolutely love Lane Thomas. And I say big trade because I know he's not a household name, but it would have cost a lot to get Lane Thomas. He's going to be a star going forward and is already doing very, very well. CJ Abrams, he came over, part of that haul with Mackenzie Gore as well, who we're going to see in game 2 of this series. But CJ Abrams, part of that haul from San Diego for Josh Bell and Juan Soto. He leads the team with 34 stolen bases. Now, I'm very intrigued by the Nationals catching situation. You have Keibert Ruiz and you have Riley Adams. Yeah, you recognize that name, of course. Now, Keibert Ruiz will be the starter. You will see him, at least 2 of these three games here. Keibert Ruiz came over from the Dodgers in that Trey Turner, Max Scherzer blockbuster trade. He's got 15 home runs this season. I mean, really legit by far. He's really coming into his own in 2023. He came into this season with 52 career RBIs. He has 52 RBIs coming into this game. I mean, he's really, really coming into his own right before our eyes. Knew that was going to happen, right? He was a big-time catching prospect. And Riley Adams. Shout out to Riley Adams. Riley Adams is having his career best season. He's hitting just under 300. I mean, that's going to work. We were talking earlier about the Blue Jays need the catchers to step up offensively. Well, there's Riley Adams hitting 297, 355 on base, and an 871 OPS. Holy moly. Riley Adams' previous career best for RBIs on a season was 10. He's already doubled that this season. I mean, I'm intrigued. I'm intrigued by the Nationals catcher situation, and it's something the Blue Jays will have to navigate and be careful with offensively. When they're up offensively, of course. Now, speaking of the Nationals being up offensively, who's going to pose them tonight? Let's get into two game ones to Monday night's pitching matchup. And, of course, this game available for you on SiriusXM. It's Kevin Gausman versus Josiah Gray. Oh, boy. On paper, this one's a doozy. Now, Kevin Gausman, my goodness. No pitcher in Major League Baseball gets less run support than Kevin Gausman. He's made 4 August starts. The Blue Jays have scored 6 total runs. My goodness. I mean, Kevin Gausman's 9-8 on the season, and he's not even out there asking for much. Kevin Gausman 9-8 on the season. He's 7-2 when the Blue Jays score at least 3 runs. So he's not even looking for offensive explosions. He's just looking for the offense to do something because he's going to be good enough to pitch their way to it, to contribute to a Blue Jay win. If the offense does something, does anything, 7-2 when the Blue Jays score at least 3 runs. Okay. Now, since the All-Star break, Kevin Gausman has been alternating really good starts with really bad starts. His earned runs, remember, he allowed 4 right out the gate on those 4 home runs, then just 1 earned run, then 3 earned runs, no earned runs, 5 earned runs, 2 earned runs. So it is the turn, right? We are back to the turn of the bad start, but let's see how that goes tonight. Now, in the 19 starts before the All-Star break, Kevin Gausman had allowed 9 home runs. In the 6 starts since the All-Star break, he's already at 7 home runs allowed. So we know Kevin Gausman hasn't been nearly as sharp in the second half, but the one good thing is that he's got a very good ERA. He's done very well at Rogers Center, a 3.12 ERA at Rogers Center. Now, the Blue Jays just 6-6 when Gausman starts at home, and they've lost 4 of his last 5 home starts. But in those 5 home starts, they've totaled 13 runs. So, any sort of win-loss record, right, with Kevin Gausman is not going to tell the story because of how horrible the offense has been for him. Now, Kevin Gausman doesn't have a whole lot of experience versus these current Nationals. Dominic Smith is 0 for 2 with a couple of Ks. Jeter Downs is 0 for 2. Lane Thomas is 0 for 1. And would you believe, Wednesday starter Patrick Corbin, he's the only current National that's ever had a hit. Because, of course, for the longest time, there was no universal DH, right? For the longest time, pitchers hit. Patrick Corbin's actually 1 for 2 in his career. I don't think we'll see him pinch hit. Don't get me wrong there, but it's pretty funny that the only one who's had any success offensively in their careers, national-wise, against Kevin Gausman is the pitcher. Now, how about Gray? 7-10 on the season for the Nats, 3.85 ERA. Now, the Nats scored just 1 total run in Gray's first 4 starts, and in the 21 starts since, they're 11-10. So this is a team, I know they're super hot right now, but overall well under 500, but over 500 since that horrible start that they put on Josiah Gray. So my gosh, this guy's a real deal for them. He was an all-star, by the way, this season. Pitched an inning in that all-star game, faced 3 Texas Rangers, got him 3 up, 3 down, had a strikeout in there as well. Yeah, this is an all-star, by the way. Now, early in his career, after the Reds drafted him in the second round, that was the 2018 MLB draft, he was traded to the Dodgers in a multiplayer trade that would include Matt Kemp and Yasiel Puig. And then a few years later was traded along with his battery rate, Kyber Ruiz, who we were talking about earlier, again, from LA to Washington, part of that Scherzer and a Trey Turner trade. And again, we know that Ruiz is having that breakout season. Ruiz, again, had 11 career home runs coming into this season, already has 15 this season. My goodness. And as far as Gray goes, there's a definite glass half empty aspect to this. Again, not only is Washington hot, not only is Gray hot, but his ERA is just under 6 at home, but his ERA is 2.73 on the road. He's been significantly better on the road, which, of course, this is a road game for the Washington Nationals. Now, the last time out for Gray allowed just 1 run on 6 innings. That was a 2-1 win over the Yankees. Now, his previous 3 starts in August, though, he was, I'll say, scuffling a bit. He'd allowed 5, 4, and 5 runs. That was over 11 and a third innings pitched. So in his first 3 August starts, 11 and 1/3 innings pitched, 14 runs allowed. So was Gray starting to come back, slip a little bit here and getting some fatigue going in his rookie season? Hard to say, considering he was so good last time out against the Yankees. Now, he has what we're going to see tonight from Gray, you're going to see, I would say it's almost like a poor man's version of Chris Bassett. And I say that because he has such a repertoire. His pitches are a little higher end than Chris Bassett, but he doesn't throw quite as many. Bassett throws, can throw upwards of 8 pitches. Well, Gray can throw 5 or 6 pitches as well. And what's interesting is it's his hardest pitches that are getting hits. He's got that, he runs his fastball up there in the mid-90s. He runs his sinker up there in the mid-90s. Now, both of those pitches have given him some problems here, especially when he's been missing with his spots. They've been very hittable. His off-speed pitches have been really good. Gray is generating a lot of ground balls with his off-speed pitches. He'll strike you out. There's no doubt about it. He has that stuff, but we'll know that Josiah Gray is really good, and the Jays are in trouble tonight if we see a lot of ground balls early. If he's generating ground balls, he's on. Now, he's brand new to the big league level, right? So you can imagine not a whole lot of Blue Jay at bats career-wise against them. Vlad 0 for 3 with a strikeout. Bo 1 for 3 with a strikeout, and of course, we're going to have to remain to be seen if Bo even plays tonight. We'll have to see what's happening there going forward. Now, the only other Blue Jay that's faced him, and some glass half full news here, Dalton Varsho faced Gray last season. In his first at-bat, he picked on his second pitch, but he picked on a fastball, and he lined it hard, but right at the right fielder. Okay, but encouraging, he hit that hard. Next time up, he was ready to ambush a first pitch fastball. Hello, what have we been begging the Blue Jays to do way more this season, right? Be ready to hit that first pitch, especially if it's right down the middle. Dalton Varsho was ready for that just a season ago against Josiah Gray, took him deep. So come on tonight, Dalton Varsho. A reminder that tonight's Blue Jays and Nationals tilt is on Sirius XM. And coming up on the Locked On Blue Jay podcast, we're going to take a look at the out-of-town scoreboard to see what playoff foes are in action tonight and what do we need to keep an eye on, who do we need to be rooting for. Now, first, I wanted to talk about Sleeper. Sleeper is a fantasy sports and real money gaming app focused on bringing people together through sports and gaming. Sleeper has become the fastest organically growing fantasy platform in the world, over 5 million active users in 2022, while earning some of the highest levels of engagement per user in the industry. Said Sleeper, it's not just about sports, it's about building personal connections and lasting memories. Swing for the fences on Sleeper picks, and you could win up to 100 times your money. Predict the hottest baseball stats like home runs, hits, strikeouts, and much more to cash in on your daily fantasy baseball skills. Use the promo code Locked On, and you'll get up to $100 match for your first deposit. Terms and conditions apply. See Sleeper's terms of use for details. Currently operational in over 30 states. Check out Sleeper today. Now, of the Texas Rangers, the Houston Astros, and the Seattle Mariners, the Blue Jays need to leapfrog one of those teams to make the playoffs. If you are epically glass half full, then you may want to include Tampa Bay in there as well. It's just that is not going to happen. So, sorry to be the bearer of bad news there, but catching any of Seattle, Houston, or Texas could well happen. And I mean, to be blunt, has to happen. Blue Jays currently 2.5 games back of both Texas and Houston, 3.5 back of Seattle. Now, hate to mention it, but of course, you do have to keep an eye in the rear view as well, right? Because the Boston Red Sox are just 2 back currently of the Toronto Blue Jays. Well, speaking of Houston, speaking of Boston, Astros start a series at Fenway Park tonight against the Red Sox. Now, you remember these two teams got together for a 4-game series last week. They split it. They went 2-2, which would have been perfect for the Blue Jays if they had won their series against Baltimore, because they would have gained ground on both teams. They did not. They lost the series to Baltimore, and in fact, that meant that they lost a half a game because they had a day off in there as well. So they lost half a game during that 4-game stretch to both of these teams. Oh boy. We have Christian Javier and Chris Sale as the pitching matchup. Good looking pitching matchup. The Astros 17-7 when Javier pitches. Okay, my goodness. And he pitched versus the Red Sox last week. Now, he was just decent at best. He did get the win. It was a 9-4 Houston victory, but I mean, Javier, he was decent at best. Now, Chris Sale is back for the Red Sox. This will be his 4th start since returning from injury. Red Sox have won 2 of his previous 3 since returning from injury. And overall, big picture on the season, Red Sox are 10-4 in Chris Sale starts, and that includes 5-1 at Fenway, the location of tonight's game. Now, Chris Sale, the same as Javier, in that he pitched against these opponents. He pitched against the Astros last week, and he was also decent at best. Had a ton of strikeouts, yes, but Houston hit Sale, and that just like Javier, though, Sale did enough to get the win. That was a 7-5 Red Sox victory. I mean, big picture-wise, I really think we need to be rooting for the Boston Red Sox here tonight. I know. It's not for the faint of heart there to be rooting for the Boston Red Sox, but man, when I look at this right now, I think we need to root for the Red Sox tonight. We're definitely rooting for the New York Mets tonight. Speaking of not for the faint of heart, my goodness, the Texas Rangers are heading to New York for a series with the Mets. We've been talking during this episode about how hot the Washington Nationals are. It's propelled the Nationals out of last place. They're on fire. The Mets are free falling. It's propelled the Nats actually into 4th. The Mets now in 5th and last place in the NL East. So my goodness, we need help from a last place team. That ain't great. Tonight's pitching matchup, John Gray versus Tyler Meagle. Now, some glass half full for Toronto Blue Jay fans. We really need Texas to lose tonight. Well, for John Gray, he's had 4 career starts at Citi Field in New York. He's 0-3, and his ERA is just under 8. He has not pitched well in this ballpark. John Gray, keep that up tonight. Now, the Mets have won just 2 of Meagle's last 10 starts. Oh boy, hey, they're in free fall mode. A 6.86 ERA for Meagle since the All-Star break. My goodness. Now, I can't offer this piece of glass half full when it comes to rooting for Meagle tonight against the Rangers. Meagle just 2-5 and ERA under 8 on the road. So he's been a nightmare on the road. And yes, he struggled mightily lately, but overall, 5-2 with a nifty little 3.49 ERA. That's going to work all season at Citi Field. So hopefully we see the big pitcher Meagle, who's pitched well at home, not the one who's been really scuffling lately, because we're going to need an upset in that game. Oakland at Seattle. My goodness. In the last 30 games, the Seattle Mariners are 24 I do beg your pardon. Holy moly. They just went 8-2 on a 10-game road trip, and that included a 3-game sweep at Houston. I mean, my absolute goodness. Now, I'll say this. Following this 3-game series versus the Oakland A's, Seattle embarks on another, believe it or not, another 10-game road trip. This one 3 at the Mets. So get used to cheering for the Mets. Hey, get used to some deep dives on the New York Mets, Blue Jay fans. They're going to be prominent. We need them to be really good down the stretch. Believe me. I mean, we're going to talk about that a lot going forward here. But it's 3 the next 10-game road trip coming up later. It starts later on this week for Seattle. 3 at the Mets, then 3 at Cincy, and it finishes with 4 at Tampa Bay. Come on. Could that be a 5-5, a 4-6 road trip that gives the Blue Jays a chance to gain some ground on Seattle? I mean, wishful thinking to say the least, right? Seattle on a 24-6 run, wishful thinking to say the least. But I mean, this is the sort of math we have to try to work out, right? It's us, the Toronto Blue Jays, on the outside looking in. These are the sort of things we need to figure out. This is the sort of little reindeer games we need to be playing and math we need to be figuring out down this stretch. I mean, just stunning. As a side note, just stunning. For sure, I saw it coming that we would be scoreboard watching at the end of the season. For sure, yes. But scoreboard watching, needing so much help because we're on the outside looking in. Boy, oh boy. I mean, every day is no. I simply did not see this coming. That's a wrap for Monday's Locked On Blue Jays podcast. Hope you enjoyed today's episode. Reminder that SiriusXM has all the Blue Jay action for you down the stretch. For now, keep it locked on the Locked On Podcast Network and check out Sully hosting Locked On MLB. It is very, very nervously that I say to you, go Jays, go. It is very concerned that I say to you, go Jays, go. With a lot of concern there, I say that. But, I mean, go Jays, go, right? And we'll talk tomorrow.